I want you to tell me, what's the difference between formal and informal?
Who are you talking to?
Okay.
When you're referring to conjugations, when we normally do it, if you talk about something informal, the informal version of you, since there's 4 different yous, you're familiar with that person, so informal, familiar, synonymous terms. You're able to speak with them more informally, or since you're familiar with them. So this.
Okay, I was watching. I know this is gonna sound really stupid, but I was watching King of the Hill last night, and it said like mi casa and tu is whatever tu casa.
That's your house, not you house, not this two.
Well, I mean, can it still be used like that?
Tu casa, mi casa.
Oh, okay.
But it's 2 different words. Tu with an accent is you informal.
I thought they were just making fun of Spanish people.
Tu casa is the possessive adjective for your, the house belongs to you. Like mi casa belongs to me, tu casa belongs to you.
Oh, so that's how it's said.
2 different words though.
Mi casa, tu casa. Like,
Mi casa is tu casa is that kind of the
okay, I'm good.
term I guess it's used. But I'm going to mention this. You're not responsible for this. I want you to know that there's a different way to do what we're about to do. Okay? If you're familiar with somebody, you're going to be more informal with them, and you're going to say, hey, do something for me. But you're going to do it in a different way than we normally do what we're about to do. All you would do, and again, just listen for now, we're going to take notes. When you do your conjugation box, you have your singular side, your plural side. The 3rd person singular, 1, 2, 3. That's basically the ending that you would use with informal commands, telling or asking somebody to do something, which is not a conjugation. You don't know if they're going to do it. You're just asking them or telling them to do it. So for example, the verb sacar there can mean to take out. If I ask you, saque una hoja de papel. Take out a piece of paper. Okay. If I know you, I can be informal with you, and if it's an AR verb, I'm just going to use an A, so it's going to look like the 3rd person singular conjugation. But I don't know if you're going to do it. I'm just asking you to do it. Okay. Just like a lot of teachers ask you to do a lot of things, and you may or may not do them. Okay. So, again, these are not conjugations, but it looks like one, right? Saca. Looks like the el usted form of the verb, but this is the command for take something out, and then for ER and IR verbs you would just use an E. So the simple way to do informal commands is just, it looks like the conjugation, but it isn't. You're asking them or telling them to do something, which is what a command is. Okay. There's different things that happen that are irregular, which we're not going to mention, and there's different things that happen with go verbs that we're not going to mention because we're not focusing on informal commands. We always focus on the formal to be safe, to know that we are not going to offend anybody by using the informal version when we should always use formal until we know somebody well enough. Okay. So informal, just for you to know, because the formal way is basically just flipping that. It's the direct opposite. Okay. Also, just so you know, we're not going to focus on negative to commands. If you see, the reason why I wanted to make a distinction at first about formal, informal is that if it's a to command, it doesn't mean conjugated for the to form. It doesn't mean that to is doing it. It's just telling you that you're going to be informal. You can use the informal version with to commands. We are going to do usted commands, which are formal commands, because you're going to be more formal. Okay. And again, when things change to negative for to commands, it gets a little complicated, and things change. Good news that for us that won't happen for formal commands. Okay. So just know, to commands are different than formal commands, but we are going to focus on formal. So for now, just listen, then we'll take our notes. And don't be overwhelmed by all the information that's up here. Okay. Here we go. Formal commands. I want you to be clear from the beginning, these are not conjugations. Okay? So even though you see, it can be called usted command or formal command. It's the same thing, right? Usted is the formal you. Okay, so same exact thing. So not a conjugation. So formal commands for using for usted and ustedes. All that means is that I'm going to tell you, usted, one person to do something, or I'm going to tell y'all, you plural, a bunch of people to do something. That's all that means. But you're not conjugating. Are we clear on that? Okay. For informal ones, I told you that you use A for ER verbs. For formal, you just flip it. So very crucial that you use the right ending, or else you're using the wrong form of the command. So for AR verbs, what you're going to do is you're going to take the AR verb, you're going to drop the AR like you normally do for conjugations, but you're not conjugating. The ending that you're adding is just telling them to do something. Okay. Here's the extra step. For the verb, the rule basically is you take an AR verb, you go to the yo form of it in the present tense, and then you're going to drop the O. This is what I was telling you about before, that once you drop the O, you've dropped the conjugation. It is no longer conjugation. What we're going to add back to it is not an ending like a conjugation like we've always done. All it is just telling somebody to do something, but it's the ending for the command. So for AR verbs, for example, sentar. For regular verbs, it makes no sense really to have to go to the yo form, but for verbs that change, you have to, because for the yo form of the verb sentar, it changes E to IE. So you go to the yo form, which would be siento. You would drop your O, and then, which is the conjugation basically, and then you're going to replace the O, take it away, replace it with an E since it's an AR verb. And so siente would be the command telling you, one person, formally, more politely, to sit. But if I want y'all to sit, all I have to do is add an N to make it plural. So it would be sienten for plural, telling ustedes. Now, ustedes is not doing it. Y'all aren't doing it. You probably will once I ask you to do it. But that's the whole point about commands, is that I'm asking you or telling you. It's not a conjugation because you're going to do it. Then it becomes a conjugation. Okay. For now, not conjugations. So the rule is going to be go to the yo form, drop the O, and then for AR verbs, add an E. And then for ER and IR verbs, you're going to add an A. So the direct opposite for informal commands. Yes?
Would you ever direct it to, like, the nosotros form, like, even though it's not a conjugation? Like, you know how you said y'all sit down?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you would even say we sit down. But, I mean, that would just be like a regular conjugation, right?
You're either telling one person to do something or telling plural people to do something. You can't really tell ourselves to do something.
So,
it would just be basically the plural.
Oh, okay.
So all your stem changing verbs, and the reason why I gave them to you on your little half sheet is for you to remember that things happen differently with the yo forms. Stem changers make O to UE, E to IE, and E to I changes. You need to watch out for those in the yo form. You need to watch out for verbs that are shoe verbs, like tener and seguir, that have a go change and a different change. Sometimes they have it in the yo form, sometimes they don't. You need to watch out for go verbs that just change the GO at the end. And then introducir that changes also in the yo form, but it's DCO, not a go verb. Okay. Because the rule is you have to go to the yo form in the present tense, drop the O, and then that stem is going to be your formal command stem to tell somebody to do something.
Wow.
Are we okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay. There's going to be a few irregulars that we're going to cover. That's always to be expected. And this is all dealing with verbs in the present tense going to the yo form. There's going to be a lovely, and again, I don't make this up. I'm just trying to explain it best I can, as simple as I can. There's going to be verbs that you're going to need to watch out for. Your caracterizar verbs. Normally, when we refer to caracterizar, we're talking about what tense? Preterite. Okay. Everything else, though, you're going to the yo form in the present tense. But for caracterizar verbs, you're going to go to the yo form in the preterite tense. If you add an accent to the verb, it's preterite. If you take away that accent, it becomes the command. So if I say, yo busqué un libro, I looked for a book. If I take away that accent, and you guys always get mad at me for counting off for accents, well, it's a whole entirely different grammar concept and word. Because if I just say busque, it's look for your book, busque su libro. So it's two totally different things. Okay. So we're going to go to the yo form, we're going to take away the accent, we're going to use those same QUE, GUE, CE endings, just with no accents. Okay. But, and I'm going to tell you about it again in just a second here when we put it in our notes, the verb empezar, you're going to look at both present and preterite. And again, seems complicated. But once we kind of get all our verbs down, you'll have them listed and it'll be easy to remember. Empezar makes an IE change. It's in your little half sheet in the present tense. In the preterite, it's a verb change. You're going to make both changes for the command. So this EMPIE for the present tense and then CE for the preterite. Empiece is me telling you to begin or start something.
Is that for all of the verbs? If they change?
If they change, and there's not very many. I think there's only 2 that we're going to deal with. Okay. So empiece is telling one person formally, usted, to do something, or telling y'all, empiecen, if I add an N to it, for y'all to begin or start something. Questions so far?
Do you have an air horn?
I do not.